What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, the Detroit Lions, as many people know, are going through a bit of a rebuild. The Detroit Lions are not necessarily going to be competitors in 2021, and a lot of their rebuild, especially this offseason, is going to be centered around rebuilding the wide receiving core. Now, the Detroit Lions only have two current wide receivers returning in the 2021 season, or only have two wide receivers under contract for the 2021 season. Those two wide receivers are Quintez Cephas, the second-year wide receiver, who as a rookie showed a couple flashes, showed us some nice things on tape and on the field, but wasn't really a truly dominant wide receiver for the Detroit Lions, along with wide receiver Geronimo Allison, who missed the entire season as he decided to opt out due to the global pandemic. Now, those are the only two wide receivers the Lions are set to return this season, and with that being the case, obviously the Lions cannot roll into 2021 with just two wide receivers on the roster, and a lot of them fixing and a lot of the retooling and a lot of the wide receivers they're going to look for will be available in the free agent market. And in today's video, I wanted to talk about the Lions' top free agent options at wide receiver, talk about some of the guys that I think the Lions could sign right now that could help both right now, help in the immediate future, as well as helping us 3-4 years down the line when the rebuild is hopefully successful and when the rebuild is finally starting to conclude. So with all that being said, and without any further ado, let's get right into talking about the Detroit Lions' top free agent options at the wide receiver position going into this offseason. Now, as I said, the Detroit Lions are going through a bit of a rebuild right now. So when I was looking for wide receivers, when I was looking for guys that could join the squad, I was primarily looking for younger wide receivers that had shown talent, wide receivers that had shown flash in the NFL, but also guys that were free agents and young enough to still be around 2 or 3 years in the future, and still in those 2 to 3 years still have a lot of effect and still be very quality NFL starters. Now, the first option I believe the Lions should take a look at, and the first player I believe the Detroit Lions should call up in free agency, is wide receiver Corey Davis. Now, Corey Davis is currently a member of the Tennessee Titans and is set to be a free agent this offseason, just like everybody else in this video. Now, Corey Davis in the 2020 NFL season finished with 65 receptions for 984 yards and 5 touchdowns while only playing in 14 games in a very run-heavy and run-centric offense. Now, Corey Davis had a very good season through the air. As I said, 65 receptions, 984 yards, and 5 touchdowns in that Tennessee system. That is not easy to do. Now, Corey Davis is a guy that a lot of fans have liked for a very long time. Corey Davis is a guy that I personally thought the Lions should have traded for in last offseason. He's a guy that a lot of other Lions fans wanted to trade for, and a guy that a lot of Lions fans just want in Detroit. Now, Corey Davis, to me, is a very good option at wide receiver and should be the #1 choice if the Lions can convince him to come to Detroit. He has the size, the speed, and the skill. He stands at 6'3", 209 pounds. He did not run his 40-yard dash, but he was projected to run somewhere in the low 4.4s. And with all of that being the case, he is only 26 years old and will only be 26 years old when the NFL season kicks off next year. So, I mean, if you're looking at a wide receiver option, obviously you need big wide receivers. If you're the Lions, you need wide receivers for your team. Corey Davis should be the #1 option. He has the size, he has the speed, he has the athleticism, he has the ball skills. He's a very good wide receiver deep down the field. He's a very good deep threat, and he would give the Lions offense a lot of options. He wouldn't be quite the wide receiver that Kenny Galladay is, but he would bring a similar skill set as far as stretching the field, getting open downfield, and making big receptions down the field. Like, Corey Davis is a very solid wide receiver, and I did a whole nother video talking about Corey Davis by himself a few months ago, so if you want to go see a really deep breakdown on him, you can go watch that video. But I think Corey Davis is a very solid wide receiver, and if the Lions can bring him in, it would be a young wide receiver, a young and talented wide receiver coming back to Michigan. That's where he played in college. That's where he played in high school. You know, it seems to make a lot of sense. A Michigan kid coming back to Michigan to play for the Michigan NFL football team. You know, it makes a lot of sense for him, and it makes a lot of sense for the Detroit Lions, as they would be adding a young, talented wide receiver to their wide receiving core. Now, the second option and the second wide receiver the Detroit Lions can look at in this offseason is wide receiver Curtis Samuel. Now, Curtis Samuel in 2020 was a very dynamic weapon for the Carolina Panthers. He finished the season with 257 touches with 1,051 yards and 19 total touchdowns. Now, those are both his rushing and his receiving numbers, as he was a very dynamic threat in both the rushing and the receiving game. Now, Curtis Samuel, to me, is just a very young, explosive player. And although he's not necessarily going to have the biggest numbers, although he's not necessarily always going to be a 1,000-yard wide receiver, he's not going to be the most dominant presence on the field. He is just such a dynamic player. He's such an athletically gifted player that he could bring a lot of value to this Lions wide receiver core that for a very long time hasn't had that really great athlete that can just take over and outrun people, outjump people, make it so that their leverages are poor. We have never had that really big, deep threat wide receiver that can just make plays by himself, and Curtis Samuel would bring that to Detroit. Curtis Samuel runs a 4.3 40, put up 18 reps on the bench, had a 119-inch broad jump, a 4.33 second shuttle, and a 37-inch vertical jump. He is an explosive, young, talented, dynamic player, and the best part about him, he's only 24 years old and would be a very cheap player, as he has not necessarily had the greatest production in the NFL yet. Now, you might be saying, well, if he hasn't had the greatest production, why would we want to bring him in? As I said, looking at his athleticism, looking at his ability to stretch the field, and looking at just his dynamic playmaking ability, Curtis Samuel would be a huge get for this Detroit Lions team. He would add speed, he would add explosiveness, he would stretch the field, he could be used underneath, over the top. You can really use Curtis Samuel any way you want, and he can fit into your offense in so many different ways that he's not just a wide receiver for your team, he is a weapon for your team. He can be used in the rushing attack, he can be used in the screen game, in the deep passing game, intermediate passing. He can stretch the field and open up everything else for people underneath. And if the secondary doesn't account for Curtis Samuel, if they try to take away that underneath route, Curtis Samuel has the speed to run right by man coverage and right by one-on-one coverage to take it to the house for a deep touchdown. Curtis Samuel, to me, is a very good weapon. He's a very dynamic and explosive weapon for anybody that picks him up. And if the Detroit Lions were to add a guy of his caliber to the team, it would make the whole team better, as his skill set just opens up everything else for an NFL roster and opens up everything else for an offense. Now, I don't think a wide receiver free agency video would be complete without at least mentioning Allen Robinson, the wide receiver out of Chicago. Now, Allen Robinson, to me, is the best wide receiver in free agency. He's the best, the most complete, and the most experienced wide receiver that you are going to find. Last season with the Chicago Bears, Allen Robinson finished with 102 total receptions on the year with 1,250 yards and 6 touchdowns. As I said, probably the best wide receiver in free agency. Allen Robinson also has the size and the age that you would like to see out of a wide receiver coming to Detroit, standing at 6'2", 220 pounds, and only being set 27 years old. Now, Allen Robinson is not quite the athlete that Corey Davis and Curtis Samuel are. He's not going to run in the 4.4s. He's not going to run in the 4.3s. He's never going to be the most explosive yard after catch guy, but Allen Robinson is just the pure wide receiver. He's the best pure wide receiver in this class. He's the most experienced. He has the best hands. He is the most productive by far out of just about every wide receiver you're going to find in this class. And not to mention, Allen Robinson is from Detroit. He's from Michigan. So if he wants to come back, just similarly to Corey Davis, that could be a really good bargaining chip, saying, hey, Allen Robinson, we love what you're doing. We love you in the NFL. We'd love to bring you back home to play for your hometown team. And that might sound ridiculous to some people, but that does have an impact on players. That does hold a little bit of power over some players where, they grew up watching this team. They grew up dreaming about playing for the Detroit Lions one day, and now they have that opportunity to do so and help that team become successful and help be a part of their rebuild. Allen Robinson will be a cheaper upgrade over Kenny Golladay. I think Kenny Golladay is a great wide receiver, but I don't know if I'm going to pay Kenny Golladay $19 million over one season when I could get a better wide receiver in Allen Robinson for a longer and a cheaper yearly contract. So I think Allen Robinson, if he does want to come to Detroit, if he does want to come back home, would be the best option for the Detroit Lions. As I said, would be a cheaper upgrade over Kenny Golladay and would be the best wide receiver, or one of the best wide receivers in the North, taking Kenny Galladay's spot for a cheaper contract without losing a step and without the Detroit Lions having to take a step back and losing that kind of talent and that kind of production that Kenny Galladay gives them. Now, I do have a couple other honorable mentions, guys that I don't think the Detroit Lions will go out and get, guys that I don't think are necessarily the top or the highest prospects that the Lions should look at first, but guys that I think could very realistically come to Detroit and add very similar things to the previous three prospects. Now, the first honorable mention I had for this list was Will Fuller. Will Fuller is 27 years old and is just an athletic monster. I mean, he is fast, he's an explosive, he is a deep threat, and he is a huge threat to take it to the house from anywhere on the field at any time he touches the ball. He does have some injury concerns, which is slightly concerning, and was suspended this year, I believe, for PED use. So that will be a little bit of a turnoff from Will Fuller. But as I said, when he's on the field, he's a young, dynamic player, very similarly to Curtis Samuel. But again, his injury factor, his injury concern is the only thing that makes me think he's not going to be quite worth it. And I do believe he will be asking for more money than Curtis Samuel will be doing, or than what Curtis Samuel will be asking for. Now another guy that I have on the list, another potential wide receiver, is former first-round pick John Ross. John Ross is also 27 years of age, but again, very explosive athlete, very explosive wide receiver, can take the ball to the house from anywhere. I mean, he's a huge deep threat, was that way at Washington. Obviously, the number 8 overall pick for a reason, broke the 40-yard dash record, I believe, running a 4.22. Very explosive athlete, very good athlete, and would bring a lot of dynamic playmaking ability to Detroit. Just like Will Fuller, though, he does have some injury concerns, and just like Will Fuller, he has not been able to stay healthy and stay on the field long enough to really warrant a big-time contract or really show the NFL what he is truly capable of with his athletic ability. Now, the last player I have on this list and the last honorable mention I have for the Detroit Lions is Brandon Powell, the wide receiver out of Atlanta. Now, Brandon Powell actually originally started his career in Detroit, and actually I thought when he was in Detroit, I thought when he was on the Lions, he played very well for us. He started in one game against the Green Bay Packers and had a 100-yard day. I mean, he was really, really good for the Lions. I thought he was solid, and I was shocked when the Detroit Lions decided to release him. When they decided to get rid of Brandon Powell, I was shocked by that move because I thought he was a very good wide receiver. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Golden Tate, where he's going to get you yards after the catch. He's going to be a good, solid wide receiver. He's going to make people miss in the open field, and just he can make plays happen with the ball in his hands. He's not going to be the fastest. He's not going to be the most explosive guy, but he is going to just get you yards after the catch. He's going to make people miss, and he is just going to be a hard guy to bring down in the open space. And sometimes that's just a valuable skill to have in your wide receiver core that not a lot of other wide receivers always have that ability. With all that being said, those are kind of, I guess, 6 wide receivers I think the Lions should consider bringing in for free agency. Again, I think Corey Davis should be option 1, and I think he's actually the most likely option. Curtis Samuel, I think, should be option 2, and I think if we could bring in Corey and Curtis Samuel, I think that would be a very successful 1-2 combination in Detroit to pair with Quintez Cephas, Geronimo Allison, and maybe a wide receiver or 2 in the draft class. You know, I think Allen Robinson, if we were able to convince him to come to Detroit, would be a big upgrade over Kenny Galladay from a value standpoint. Obviously, I think, as I said, I think Allen Robinson is a better player and would be on a much cheaper contract, so that would help the Lions tremendously from that standpoint. And then if you can't get any of the top 3 options, you obviously have 3 other explosive, dynamic players that can make plays on the ground and can make really big plays for your offense when given opportunity. With all that being said, that is all I got for you guys today. Those are my 6 wide receivers I do believe the Lions should take a look at and should try to bring in this free agent period. Let me know down in the comments below what you guys think about this list. What wide receivers would you want the Detroit Lions to bring in? What are you looking for in your wide receivers? Are you looking for big body jump ball contested catch wide receivers? Are you looking for quick, fast, dynamic playmakers like Curtis Samuel or Will Fuller? Or are you looking at something else for your wide receivers to have? Let me know what you guys think about the wide receiver position down in the comments below. But with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you all so very much for watching the video. If there is Lions news before tomorrow, then I will obviously make a video letting every single person know. But until then, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you all so very much for watching, and I'll see y'all tomorrow with more Lions content. Thank you all for watching. Bye, guys.